Maryland, they looked defiant in their 43-point victory in week one. Michigan State, they looked like a team that won by 6 points against FAU, but yet I still see a pretty reasonable path to victory. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below how high your confidence is for this game, because Brendan Moore of Spartans Illustrated, look, let me just set the table like this. I'll start defending myself right off the bat. If you are a new listener of this show, which, first of all, thank you very much for hopping on Locked On Spartans. Anyway, if you're a new listener of this show, no, this isn't like an example of, hey, there's the blind slappy homer over there just picking Michigan State out of a game of which they're double-digit underdogs almost. Now, listeners of the podcast that have been doing this for a few years, there's no shortage of examples where we've chalked up a loss even before the ball's been kicked off. So it's not blind homerism. I do have a reason or two why I do feel a little good about this game. But Brendan, I'll ask you, from a scale of 1 to like Johnny Spirit delusional fan, like how crazy do I sound saying that, yes, despite being 9.5-point underdogs, I see a roadmap to victory for our Spartans here coming up this weekend?
I mean, there is a roadmap to victory.
Let's
There's
go.
no doubt about it.
Let's go.
But yeah, there's also a reason that Maryland's 9.5-point favorite. So there's kind of two sides of the coin there. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit, but there are still things that can easily be improved from week 1 to week 2 for Michigan State. Last week, like just Michigan State was a couple of plays away from a 16-10 game going to like a 30-10 game. So like it's game of inches, truly.
It is, and like we played that what-if game too. You know, let's say those 3 red zone turnovers, 2 turn into touchdowns, 1 turns into a field goal, you know, in this fantasy world that we've created. Yeah, you're north of 30 points. But then again, it's big ifs, because unfortunately some of the things that broke Michigan State's back on Friday are things that we've seen here for, well, the last few years. The nonsensical penalties, the very untimely turnovers. But however, if they do, for layman's terms, flip the switch and actually don't turn the ball over 3 times in the red zone, that game looks a lot differently than, well, what we just witnessed on Friday. But the big reason why I believe, Brendan, is that where is football won? It is in the trenches. And man, I got to say, whether it's Michigan State's defense against Maryland's offensive line, because FAU, they had 4 new starters at offensive line last week, Brendan. Do you know how many the Terrapins have this week? How many brand new starting offensive linemen they have? Fetch a guess.
Ooh, fetch a guess.
Yeah.
It's got to be, I think, probably 3 or 4 if I were to guess.
Oh, I would keep going if I were you. Is it all 5?
Wow.
It is a brand new slate of offensive linemen. So granted, it will be a step up in competition just solely on the fact that they're a Power 4 unit. And, you know, they got a transfer from Purdue, a guy that I think started 5 games for the Boilermakers in his last 2 years. Nevertheless, this is still a battle where Michigan State can have the upper hand in. They had 22 pressures last weekend. And while that is going to be a tough number to eclipse again, they show that they have a good pass rush last week against a brand new offensive line. You get another brand new offensive line coming up this week. I do like that on the surface. Now, Maryland's defensive line against Michigan State's offensive line. The Terrapins last week against UConn, they got 10 pressures on UConn's quarterbacks, which is like a fine number. But you'd hope for something better against UConn. And this is a unit that, while they are good at stopping the run, there was a lot to be desired about their pass rush last year. So against Michigan State, a team that just allowed 7 rushes on Aidan Chiles last week and graded very highly in pass protection on Pro Football Focus, I like where Michigan State stands in each of these battles in the trenches. Is that your number one thing that you're seeing for a roadmap to victory, or is there something else that I've missed, Brendan, that you want to bring up?
I mean, both of those are really good points, but one of the things I think is the roadmap to victory is, I mean, Maryland a little bit in the red zone. They struggled. They had to settle for some field goals against UConn. So I think Maryland, that's something they need to work on heading into week 2. I thought run blocking, if you look at those PFF numbers now, I don't think they're the Bible or anything, but their run blocking grade was not good against UConn in week 1. That was probably, I think, their weakest point or weakest grade on PFF out of all the position groups. So there's definitely trenches battles to be won for Michigan State. The inexperience on the offensive line, those offensive line guys have not seen a defensive line as good as Michigan State because you kind of week one. So trenches, it's going to be a war there. And I think Michigan State has an upper hand in terms of experience and just in terms of talent. I think Michigan State can win in the trenches. But another thing is Aidan Chiles. I think he really, really needs to step up because if you look at Maryland secondary, I thought they were okay against UConn, but there were points in the game, if you watch that game or watch some highlights, where they were exposed by UConn's quarterback putting some of those defenders in points of conflict. So I think if Lindgren can get Chiles rolled out, get some of those defenders in points of conflict, and Chiles has got to hit his downfield throws. That's key number one for me because I don't think Michigan State's winning this game unless Chiles can stretch the field vertically. So
we'll have more on Chiles here in a little bit because, I'm going to talk about the things that we absolutely have to see coming up in segment 2. But, I mean, it's just so weird talking about Maryland like this because don't get me wrong, like they are a good team. They have a good defense. They have beaten Michigan State twice in a row. They're just coming off of a 43-point victory. And granted, like, yes, UConn under Jim Moore is a little more competitive than they used to be. Like, it's still a really bad UConn team. So even at a 43-point victory, you're seeing some things that it's okay. Well, that was a little less than inspiring. So I'm kind of just leaning on that. And just the fact that it's in the trenches where Michigan State might have Maryland against the ropes a little vulnerable, like that gets me a little excited for this game. I know this sounds crazy. I know that a lot of people out there can clip this show and, dunk on me should things go sideways on Saturday, but it starts in the trenches. Yes, I know I'm picking and choosing, like, pass rush versus run stopping or this and that because Michigan State's run blocking is something that could use some help. I still think overall Michigan State might have the upper hand here, and I'm pretty confident saying that. Now, I will say this. I'm not just going to, go eyes closed into the fire here and bet everything I own on the MSU money line. Like, of course, there is reason to be concerned about Maryland. Just to name a few right here, Ty Felton, 6'1" receiver. He's an absolute beast. One game, he's got 178 yards already, 2 touchdowns. My goodness gracious. I don't know if an MSU receiver will have that in this entire month, but nevertheless. Roman Hemby, strong start to the season. He's also a strong running back, too. 4.9 yards per carry last year, 5.6 yards per carry the year before that. Billy Edwards Jr., look, Brendan, if not for nothing else, he won't be a concussion patient within 30 minutes of real time like Cam Fancher was last weekend. I'm sorry. I'm just telling you what I saw last week. I think Malik Spencer's hit really played a medical role in the rest of that game based on those 2 interceptions where it looked like he wasn't sure which receiver he was really throwing to. How out of line am I for that? If that was too out of line, I could edit all this out. You be the judge of that, Brendan.
No, I think that's in line. I mean, the late slides.
There we go.
It's just such a tough play for the defense. Yeah. But I mean, Maryland if they do struggle on the offensive line, if Michigan State gets penetration, I think quick passes to those receivers, screen passes, quick slant passes, those are the types of things that can kind of neutralize that. Like Michigan State's getting in that backfield. Maryland, Billy Edwards, I think he's a really good quarterback. I thought
he's played
really well against UConn. He's got a strong arm. If he can get those passes out quickly, I think that's where Maryland can kind of maybe limit the impact of that Michigan State defensive front. And that's where if that offensive line struggles, quick passes, I think could be a key to success for Maryland.
And just really quick to flip sides of the ball for Maryland of, why we might not have an easy night of sleep ahead is, they did really good against the run. Again, they were fine at stopping the run last year. They returned a lot of talent from last year's team. And you never think of Maryland football and think, oh, yeah, stout defensive front. But while they, lack somewhat in pass rush, they're actually really good at stopping the run, kind of like Michigan State was last year on defense, to be honest. A lot of similarities there. But nevertheless, against UConn, they gave the Huskies just 2.9 yards per carry. Again, it's UConn, but I don't think that number is not nothing because Michigan State did something similar against FAU. And yeah, of course, we're going to, celebrate that number. But that's what we got for Maryland. Anything else that you want to be spooked about before we start talking about what we want to see from our team this upcoming Saturday, Brendan?
Well, I mean, Maryland, you mentioned the 10 pass pressures, I believe you said, but they had 0 sacks. Like none of them resulted in sacks.
Right.
So it was against UConn, obviously not a super talented team, not a super talented offensive line there. So Maryland's pass rush leaves a lot to be desired. So I think this Michigan State offensive line, I think they can give Chiles time. And obviously, like I said, and we'll get into it, but Chiles has got to hit those downfield throws. But Maryland's run blocking, I think, is kind of a weakness. We'll see how they look against a better opponent in Michigan State. Red zone, I feel like they need to do better than what they did last week. And then Maryland's secondary, I thought, was also somewhat of a weakness. Wasn't really exposed against UConn per se, but I did notice some things there after watching their game a little bit.
We'll see. We will see. Now, later on the show, we have a pick segment. I'm going to give my 5 best bets against the spread, and you can probably already tell which way I'm going to be on for 9.5 in this game. But nevertheless, we're going to talk about things that we absolutely have to see this upcoming Saturday. But first, we need to talk to people's ears off about LinkedIn jobs. That is right, folks. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you got to go check out LinkedIn Jobs. Now, LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster, and my favorite part, for free. Now, LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you cannot find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you are not looking on LinkedIn, well, you're just not looking in the right place. Over 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, you got that right. They apply. Also, it's game day. You already know what I'm rocking. It is Home Field Apparel. Go to homefieldapparel.com. And before you smash in new promo code, by the way, listen up, Spartan24 for 15% off your first purchase. Go look at more than just Michigan State. I mean, there is plenty to look at for our Spartans. All the sweet vintage logos. Like right now, rocking my national championship basketball shirt. Even during football season, that's how sweet it is. Go look at all the other schools they have. They just dropped some new Montana lineups. Kennesaw State's in the mix. I always love their Hawaii gear too. Guys, it is the best apparel you will find, not just because of how cool you will look, but how comfortable you will feel. It is like an angel is caressing your body, whether it's the t-shirts, the sweatshirts, the long sleeve t-shirts, the hoodies, even the hats they have are quite dapper. So go to homefieldapparel.com. Again, new promo code Spartan24. That's going to save you 15% off for new customers over at homefieldapparel.com. Now let's drag him back out here. His name is Brendan Moore. He's doing fantastic work over at Spartans Illustrated. And speaking of Spartans Illustrated, that's right, I don't just blab on and on about the Spartans. Sometimes my fingers hit the keyboard and I write a thing or two. One of the things is a 3-2-1 preview. 3 things we want to see, 2 key stats, 1 best bet. So, Brendan, first and foremost, what we have to see, you alluded to this in the first segment, is just Aidan Chiles has to be better. Obvious. Like, duh. Thanks, Brainiac. The quarterback should probably be better at throwing the ball. But what I want to see is just get him an actual rhythm a little more. And this is something Brian Lindgren talked about earlier this week, is that, yes, the plan was to have more rhythm throws, I think is the word he used. But FAU, they did a pretty good job in man coverage. Now, I will say this. Is it a little concerning that a group of 5 team shut Michigan State down in man coverage? Yeah, we'll be watching that this week too. But, hey, at the end of the game, I would like to see Aidan Chiles have a little more throws from 0 to 10 yards than just 7 of which he had last week. Because 20-plus yard throws, he had 7 of those attempts too. Didn't connect on any of them. Long story short, let's get him some, live practice throws here, a nice little hitch throw to Jack Valley would never hurt anyone. Utilize the running back a little more than just one target, but just get my man loose before he just starts cranking it 38 yards downfield. I don't think that's, too much to ask for. Brendan, is there anything that is higher on your list than that of things you have to see from our Spartans here?
No, not at all. I think Aidan Chiles is number 1 thing I want to see, number 2 thing I want to see, and number 3 thing I want to see improve. So Chiles has got to throw the ball better downfield, but I also think getting him to roll out, cut the field in half, make the throw simple, cut his reads in half, roll him out, find Velling, I think Barr probably should get a little bit more involved this week, I would hope. Yeah. So to me, it's Chiles. It's making the easy throws, making those routine throws routine. So to me, Chiles is the key for Michigan State if they want to win this game.
One thing I did not have in this piece that I just want to talk about now is the separation of receivers from the defensive backs. And again, like FAU, they got some fine cornerbacks. Day Hill, I believe the guy's name is, like, he could very well be drafted like a day 3 pick, but no one's a first team All-American on that defense. Like, I don't know how many of those guys would actually start on a Big Ten defense. So the fact that the skill position players, which was a storyline going into the season, like, hey, can they find a great skill position players in the midst of all these like decent ones? So far, we're 0 for 1 on that. I'm going to need to see someone beat some cornerbacks here, even on those intermediate routes. So I didn't write that in the Spartans Illustrated piece, but without sounding too panicky, that is one thing I'm going to have both eyes on, is like, how open are these guys actually getting against other Power 4 defenses? Because if we don't see it, Brendan, permission to at least panic a little bit about this offense, as if we need a little more to panic about, or...
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, if you don't see it this game, then how are you going to expect to see it against Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, even like teams with decent teams like Rutgers or other teams? Like Boston College look good. So it's like you want to see some of these receivers step up. I know Montori Foster had a bad game, turnover issues. Hopefully he has his confidence built back up throughout the week of practice, but you'd like to see him have a bounce back game. Marsh get more involved, because I think maybe in one-on-one situations, Marsh might be your best receiver. Just his size, can go up and get the ball as fast. So to me, getting him more involved, he might be your most talented receiver. So just getting him more involved in the offense, Foster having a bounce back game. I think that's the key for those receivers. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what they can do. It's this Maryland secondary, if they can get any separation. Because if they don't, I do think it's kind of time to raise some questions. Like, if they're not successful against Maryland, how are they going to be successful against some of these other top teams?
Might be successful the next week against Prairie View A&M, but that'd be a hard stop after that, I have a feeling. Again, not to like pre-panic, but it has to happen. We got to see guys get open this week, just to simplify the game of football that much. But seriously, my God, just out-athlete some of these guys. I'm going to stay on the offensive side of the ball here, because if you're out there wondering, hey, when is this guy going to start crying about the run game again? It's right here. That's the second thing I had written down. It's just like, let Nathan Carter breathe for a little bit. Now, Nathan Carter's not an infallible running back. He's not the second coming of Kenneth Walker, but as I'm watching the game on Friday and I'm hearing a lot of people say, oh, he's not the guy. Oh, man. Oh, it's got to be K'Ron Lynch-Adams, who, fantastic game for him, by the way. I've said this stat a few times. A lot of people might be nauseated by it already, but of 19 carries from Nathan Carter, 11 of those carries he was hit at or behind the line of scrimmage. Like, my man got no help. So let's help him, whether that's scheming the run, whether it's actually hitting your blocks, whether it's understanding who you have to block. There was a myriad of issues last weekend. Let's just let Nathan Carter run. I know I'm really going out on a limb there, but that was uninspiring last Friday. How worried are you about the run game? Because I'm like at DEFCON 2 right now, but that's because I'm a jaded person and I remember everything we saw last season and it just never get off the ground the whole year. Are you a little more level-headed and reasonable, or where are you at?
I'm a little less concerned about it, because I thought they were successful outside of the tackles, running to the outside zone a little bit. But in between the tackles, I did think they struggled. I also think two things, kind of on Michigan State's running backs there, I think two things can be true at once. I think Carter is a lot better than what he showed on Friday. And the offensive line didn't do him much help because he constantly getting hit in the backfield. But I also think K'Ron Lynch-Adams, thought he showed a lot. He showed good shiftiness. He was agile, good balance on a lot of those runs. I think from what I saw in game one, I do think I would lean on him a little bit more. In the Maryland game, I would probably split carries 60-40 Lynch-Adams to Carter. And to me, I think in Michigan State running back room, it's going to be kind of a case of just feeding the hot hand this season. That's how I see it. I think you got two solid, good to solid type backs. None of them I don't think are superstars by any means, but I think both are solid, and it's just going to be a matter of feeding the hot hand who's just on that day. And I think Lynch-Adams was on Friday. We'll see who's on Saturday here.
And let's see if, we can get more passes out of the backfield. I mean, I like to believe that there's a little bit more in Brian Lindgren's bag than what seemed like the same four plays over and over again. But, hey, both these guys can catch the ball out of the backfield. They've shown that so far in their careers, whether it's at Michigan State or UMass, like K'Ron Lynch-Adams. But really quick, just on the defensive side of the ball, we hit on this earlier. I want to see more pressure on the quarterback, because pressure on the quarterbacks helps you win games. But I want to just know how much to believe that this could actually be maybe a strength for Michigan State this season. Again, FAU, 4 new offensive linemen. Okay, like that's just tough shakes for them right off the bat. But Michigan State, like, they did what they were supposed to do and more, just making Cam Fancher's life miserable. Can you do it against a Power 4 unit, which is still going to be a favorable matchup? Again, that's 5 new starting offensive linemen for Maryland. But if they do something like that again, where it's like, I don't know, like 15 pressures on the quarterback or something nice, I'm going to start really believing that, okay, we got some dogs coming off the edge here. So that was the last thing I had written down. Anything for the defense that you really want to see before we let you go and enjoy the rest of your weekend here?
Yeah, not that this was a major issue against Florida Atlantic, because, I mean, it wasn't, but Michigan State's got to limit the missed tackles against Maryland, especially in the secondary, because Maryland's got some good receivers. You mentioned Ty Felton's name. Caden Prather is a really solid player as well. He had 6 catches against UConn. So if they break a tackle, these guys can go to the house. These guys have really good speed. So to me, wrapping up, finishing tackles, rally to the football, that's going to be key for this Michigan State secondary. And I'm curious to see what they look like, because let's be honest, they weren't tested against FAU at all downfield. That secondary really wasn't. So I think this is a secondary that's going to get its first taste of, we have a quarterback that actually can complete a forward pass, and Billy Edwards got a strong arm, can fit it into tight windows. So this secondary is really going to be tested. Need to tackle well, need to play well. So I'm really looking forward to see what the secondary does.
And speaking of tackling, it was a strong showing last week. I think they only had 7 missed tackles, which is, relatively speaking, pretty good in the game of college football. So kind of like pass rush, let's see if that's actually a thing. Let's see if this is actually a good tackling team, or if it's, somewhat of a mirage against a group of 5 opponent. But Brendan Moore of Spartans Illustrated cannot thank you enough for hopping on. Folks, we will be back here in a hot second with some picks. We're going to talk a little bit about basketball news, but we'll be right back. If you are looking for tickets for any event, we're talking sporting event, concert, comedy show, if there's a ticket to it, go save yourself some money and save yourself some stress over at Gametime. This is the greatest place to buy tickets. I'm going to be honest. If for some reason Gametime doesn't want to partner with Lockdown in the future, I will still probably use Gametime long after we have this friendly partnership here, because, guys, they are all about saving that cash. Whether it's flash deals throughout the week leading up to an event, you're going to find great deals for great seats. Or let's say out there, you're a procrastinator like I am. You wake up and, oh my God, I actually forgot to buy tickets to this event I'm going to in about 2 hours. Well, they have last minute ticket deals that are second to none out there. And let's say that life gets crazy, which of course we all know that happens. They got you covered with Gametime ticket coverage, like event cancellation protection, 24-hour returns guaranteed. Let's say you lose your job. Well, they have job loss assurance, and hey, on-time ticket delivery, which is clutch, especially when you're buying just minutes before the game. So easy. It is 2 taps on your phone, and the tickets are sent straight to your phone. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all one word, LOCKEDONCollege, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime. Also, hey, with holidays approaching, and yes, I know it's only early September, but it's going to be the holiday season soon. Gift something to yourself that you have earned, like a great sign from Team Ticker. Team Ticker is the one-of-a-kind sports sign for Spartan fans. If you're watching on YouTube, you've been seeing this thing behind me for almost the last year. Now, if you're listening on a podcast, you have no idea what I'm talking about. It's like a countdown clock that you'd see at a bar or a man cave, except it's juiced up with so much steroids you cannot believe it. It is live scores. It is breaking news. It is showing the weather for the upcoming kickoff. It is just fantastic, all on a display that is a foot and a half by 2 feet. Does not take up too much room, but it still will be the talk of your man cave. Whether it's football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, soccer, or softball, Team Ticker has got you covered. You'll never miss a game, as the high-tech retro display provides a countdown to the next big game, as well as daily updates of team news, stats, schedules, standings, and so much more. You could also control the content from the app. It's almost as easy to use as a remote, guys. You don't need to know tech at all. Team Ticker is the one-of-a-kind sports sign. Go to teamticker.com and use promo code LOCKEDON to receive $50 off your Team Ticker purchase. Again, guys, teamticker.com and use promo code LOCKEDON for $50 off your Team Ticker purchase. Now let's get into the picks here. Hey, you know what? We are in the black right now. Thanks to last week, we really started hot. We won the Thursday game. All right, North Dakota State, they covered. We won the Friday game. Unfortunately, under in the MSU FAU game was a lock the entire way. And then Friday or Saturday afternoon, we're starting to feel ourselves. All right, Miami just beat the brakes off Florida. Well, those were our 3 wins. We lost LSU -4.5, and then we lost over 50.5 in Boston College versus Florida State. So this week, the top 5 picks, all these lines courtesy of FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook, by the way. Michigan State +9.5. All right, that's a big number. We just spent the previous 20 minutes talking about how Michigan State can keep this close. And just like, Sparty fandom aside, just the X's and O's of the game aside, whenever a team is almost double-digit underdogs or straight-up double-digit underdogs in a total that's so low, and right now the total is humming around 44 or 44.5, that is a lot of points you have to play with in such a low ceiling of points. So if just one ball bounces one odd way for the underdog, that could mean an easy cover. So just on principle, I always like taking that high of a number when the total is that low. But man, since it's our Spartans and a Spartan team that I think has advantages in the trenches on both sides, I'm going to go with Michigan State +9.5. Now, for the Nebraska-Colorado game, we're going to go under 57.5. Right now, I think both teams' strengths aren't necessarily the offensive line. Colorado, that seemed to be an issue that dragged over from last season, as seen against the Bison of North Dakota State. I think that's going to be a lower scoring game than many people think, so give me under 57.5 for that one. You're not going to like this next one, all you Michigan State fans, and believe me, I don't want this to happen. I'd love to lose this bet, but Michigan +7.5 over Texas. Texas is getting an overwhelming amount of bets, overwhelming amount of money. And look, Michigan, yeah, they didn't look good offensively last week, but do they have to be good offensively, or can they be adequate and still keep the game within reach with that defense? Again, it brings me no joy to say this. I want to lose this bet, but if we're in the business of giving 5 best bets, yeah, that's going to be one I'm going to have on my card. +7.5 at home with that defense. I think that's a little too many points right there. Now, for the next game, Iowa -2.5 against Iowa State, and I am being a hypocrite after I just talked about public betting, this, and that, because Iowa, it seems like they're getting 150% of the bets and the money for them. But still, guys, Iowa doesn't need to be a great offense. They hardly even need to be a good offense. They just need to be average at home against Iowa State, because we already know that defense will have things held down there. Can Iowa score 20 points and then just keep Iowa State under 17? I think so. We're going to go Hawkeyes -2.5. And for the last game, just to get in on it, Tennessee -7.5 over NC State. Josh Heupel, he's got that offense clicking early on, and no one's ever really had doubts about the Tennessee offense getting rolling early in a season. So really quick, Michigan State +9.5, under 57.5 for Nebraska, Colorado, Michigan +7.5 over Texas, Iowa -2.5 over Iowa State, and then Tennessee -7.5 over NC State. Really quick, just some basketball news. October 4th will be Midnight Madness. They're going to do it earlier in the evening, kind of somewhere around dinner time, so everyone can get home to watch the kickoff of Michigan State, Oregon, or later on that night. Also, the same night, Izzone Campout. That's right. So let's break our Farmers Almanacs out. October 4th weather in the Lansing area, it will be 90% chance of rain, 25-mile-an-hour winds with a high of 42 degrees, because it is never even somewhat barely a good day at the Izzone Campout. This dates back to when I was a student there in 2010 through 2014. It was just, oh God, miserable there. A nice game that we could have played back in the day in hindsight is what's going to be a higher number, Michigan State basketball victories or Izzone members that have succumbed to pneumonia during the Izzone Campouts. But yeah, that's going to be a tough October 4th day, but hey, you know what? Pretty cool that they're doing Midnight Madness and the Izzone Campout in the same night. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know you guys will. I don't remember that ever happening, so that's a unique event. Just get right to Midnight Madness, out for the campout, and then, well, bang, Friday night kickoff against the Ducks. So that is your little basketball news here. And guys, I hate to end the episode on such a sad note, and we would be remiss not to mention Rich Homie Quan passing away at the age of 34. So rest in peace to the Atlanta-based rapper. I think we all know his connection to Michigan State. If you think about the Rose Bowl in any capacity, if you're, like me, I'm sure a lot of millennials are. If you think about the Rose Bowl, you just catch yourself daydreaming about what happened a decade ago. Odds are, at least faintly, Type of Way by Rich Homie Quan is playing somewhere in the back of your head. I mean, he had the de facto fight song, the de facto anthem for Michigan State during that storied year. I mean, he was a mascot of the team of sorts. And really, I mean, it was just such an awesome moment to see him celebrate in the locker room after the game. I mean, you talk about completing your circles. Like, they had everyone there. The players that were there for the whole ride, the coaches there, and down to the rapper that gave them the post-game celebration song right there in the locker room. And he was on the field after the game at the Rose Bowl, and they don't give out field passes like that willy-nilly. I think each team only has a handful. I don't even think it's double-digit field passes they can hand out. But Rich Homie, he got one. Of course, it goes way more than him just being a Michigan State fan for a year or two. A lot of rappers, a lot of people were giving some tributes to him on Twitter, saying how down-to-earth he was, how special of a guy he was. But gone way too soon. I would be remiss if we did not mention that. And I would like to see Michigan State at least acknowledge him in some way for the Prairie View A&M game. I'm not saying like a helmet sticker or jersey patch or anything. I'm not even saying, do Type of Way to exit the tunnel. Like, you could still keep that Thunderstruck as far as I'm concerned, but maybe something on the big screen during a commercial break, or maybe to take the field in the second half, you play Type of Way or something like that. Let's get the marching band playing it during a commercial break. But yeah, guys, like, he had a deep connection to Michigan State, if only for 1 year, but man, that was a special year, and he was part of a cast of characters that helped make that special. So rest in peace to Rich Homie Quan. All right, guys, no good transition off that other than, hey, you know what? Take care of yourselves this weekend. Let's enjoy this game. Mix in a water or two, or maybe even three. But hey, you know what? Have a safe weekend. Let's enjoy it. Let's all hold hands together. We got this. Spartans versus Terrapins. I can see the roadmap to victory, but even if it ends in defeat, we will be here Saturday night live on YouTube. We will get the podcast out shortly after that on Saturday night. Until then, guys, I love you all. I hope you already know that. Go Green.